Hey guys, Dr. Rewire here. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm really, really grateful that you guys are here today. I'm going to cover today what I call the $1 million brain and how to actually create the $1 million brain. See, so often we're taught in this world that money is the secret to it. My best-selling book, The Four Brains of Money, we discuss really what it takes to actually know your code and how to create wealth and money. And one of the things that I found over the years is that money is merely a means. For so many people, we look at it in a means of what we want to be, our worth, our self-worth, our dignity. For a lot of people, it becomes a major, major part of their life. And what I've found is that money is nothing more than a measurement for the experience of what you want to have in your life. And so this $1 million brain is really not about just making money. Because if you think it's just about making money, you probably in the wrong place. I'm going to be honest with you right now. It's not about that. It's about understanding yourself, right? And I always sit and say that this conversation of the $1 million brain is for people who are looking to create wealth in their life, create money in their life, but also looking to create relationships and have family as a part of it. And then having contribution and service to the world as a part of it as well. So either way, it's a combination of these of how you do it. Now I can tell you a little bit who like this conversation, who's really going to be inspired by it. If you're here and you're like a wellness leader or someone who's really understanding mind body health or really understanding to how to build a business typically in the health related space, this is probably going to be something that you're really resonating with because what I found is that those are the people that love, love, love the mind, body, spirit. And I'm not going to go through the neuroscience here. I mean, some of you probably already teach neuroscience who are watching this. So I'm not going to go through the neuroscience. I'm going to show you over the next half hour, 45 minutes or so, how the brain really is designed, how it works, and then how to really uncover the underlying blueprint that's preventing you from creating the wealth, the money, the income that you're looking for. So we've got a lot of work to do. So I'm going to dive right into this, right? I love for you to have a pen and paper because we're going to take a bunch of notes. We're going to get down nitty gritty. I want you guys to know that if you're here, I'm looking at the YouTube comments and we're doing this on YouTube. And if you want to type in and comments, I can see your comments on YouTube and I will be personally talking to you through it as well. So we're going to have a lot of fun here to dive right in. So thank you guys for joining me. Let's dive into this conversation. So when we look at the basically the plateau, what I call the plateau of wellness leaders and wellness leaders where they live, where they're stuck. What we found is that now doing this over 25 years, basically, I hate even saying it, sounds makes me sound so old, right? And when we look at it, think about it in this format. I think about it in the lens of money, business, wealth. And what I found is that money lives on this side of the equation here. But there's a piece of the puzzle that makes an entrepreneur build and grow and kind of create things in their life. And that side is over here. And that's going to be the what I call the fuel, and the fuel side of the equation. That fuel is really the power of what you're running, right? It's how you show up, how you use what you use in your world. So we call that your fuel. Now, what I found is we use money as a barometer. That's it. Money is a barometer of what we want to do in our life. And what I found is that in these phases, as we go through, I can see you here. I see Catherine's good to be here. Good to see you as well, my friend. Misty's here as well. There's these levels in income that I found that where people kind of get blocked up. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard the saying before, but making your first million is the hardest thing to do. It is because these are all psychological barriers. What I found is 50K, 150K, 250K, 500K, and a million. These are all numerical blocks, but they're not operational. Here's the key. Here's the thing that I found in it, right? What I found is that these blocks are more psychological. And the more in our brain, because of our patterns, our nervous system, what we've heard from our parents, our family, being a millionaire. Literally, I was talking to a gentleman, 88 years old, very inspiring conversation on Saturday. And he was telling me, he's like, being a millionaire is such a big deal. And he was from India. And he's talking about being a millionaire is so different here than in India. And the whole conversation of what millionaire means, it's a head game. It's a head game. I remember when I hit my first million, I was 28 years old when I did, and it was just a crazy experience and what that number meant and what it signified for me. And now it's not even you don't even think about it. But if you're newer in business, especially in healthcare, because look, if you're watching this and you're somewhere in the wellness space, here's what I found in the wellness space. So truthfully, what I found is that we get into the world of trying to help people. We want to help lots and lots of people, but the challenge that happens is that we're trying to help people, but what happens is on the other side of the equation, we don't understand money, we don't understand our self-worth, and so we've got to build a business within this. And then there becomes this big war between the two, right? And so if that makes sense, I would like put yes in the chat box or something, right? Let me know because I've found this to be the case over the years. So if we go back to the board, we found this to be the case in this, right? Typically, your fuel in the beginning, I didn't even spell it right, but it's borrowed. Then we go to where it becomes depleted. And I'll walk you through these, right? First, you start in the borrowed space. When you're in the borrowed space, what happens is this is your body, your mind, it's borrowing belief from someone else, maybe a business leader, maybe a friend, maybe a family person. It's borrowing some level of belief from somebody else and kind of coming into the game. And you're even looking to see, is it going to work? I don't know, but you almost need your mom, your dad, your family, your friends, someone to sit and say, hey, you can do this. And then you get to the second phase between 50 and 150K. And this is where you start getting depleted. And when you start getting depleted, this is where your nervous system starts getting tired and you start feeling burned out and you feel exhausted because you're working all the time and you're working harder and you're working harder and you're working harder. But the result is really that you have more and more expenses and the net revenue stays the same. I bet you if you're watching this, you're probably like, oh crap, I know exactly what you're talking about there, right? And then the third phase where I would typically find is that we move into this next phase, which is actually the adrenal phase. And the adrenal phase is a part of your system that is running on cortisol, right? It's literally running on cortisol because it's just adrenaline. You need more sugar, more sympathetic to make the system work. And your adrenal, they start to burn out because the expenses and managing a business beyond between 150 and 250, you're already making more money than most of the people you know. You're writing off a bunch of things, but now you've got to wear all these hats in your business. You've got to go from being the healer, which is really why you got into the game, but now you got to be the marketer, you got to be the operations person, you've got to be the salesperson, you've got to now be the person that's the accountant and do taxes and doing payroll. And now you're doing all of this stuff, and you're like, wait a minute, why did I get in? This is I don't understand. I got into business for freedom. That's what they preached, but that's not why I'm here. It changes, right? But then we get to this point between 250 and 500, and typically it's closer to 500. What I find is that we get to this point of regulated, and regulated can be a dangerous space. It really can, believe it or not. Regulated can be a dangerous space because you think you've got it figured out. You're like, okay, good. I'm in comfort land. I'm in comfort land at this point, but there's still a part of you. You're making more money. You're actually putting a little bit away. You're saving. There's some sort of a nest egg starting to move, and there's some breathability that's starting to show up. And that's good. It's a great, powerful place, right? Totally don't want to take away from that. But there's a part of you that says, I want to do more. I want to do more. I want to build more, or I want to serve more. But then serving more has to create more restrictions, has to create more work. And you're like, man, the only way I know how to do this is working harder. So if I want to get to the $1 million level, I've got to now work harder. But there's a part of you unconsciously that's saying, no, no, we don't want to work harder. We're good. We're comfortable. Thank you. I'm safe. I don't need to do that because the nervous system works on safety. So then you set these goals that you're going to go after. And I'm going to sit and say, I'm going to go after this. I'm going to go build this. But you really don't push it. You don't go after it. You try, but there's like you're moving forward, but the brakes are on in the system. And the body's saying, yeah, I know I want to do this, but the whole system is saying, no, 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 we're not going to go forward until you get to this point where you finally become coherent. That's when you have not only a regulated nervous system, but a coherent nervous system, a balanced nervous system. And in a coherent system, you're actually in this place where there's flow, where there's ease. We're building business, money coming in, customers, everything is moving in a flow. And there's operational places in this for sure. Operations plays a huge capacity. But what I found is your consciousness, the way that you think plays a bigger capacity. Because if your thinking is limited and gapped, then what happens is you stay stuck in this place. You stay stuck at this level with where you're at, right? Now, typically in the beginning, let's use a different color here. In the first phase, you're really what you're doing is you're proving. You're proving yourself. You're saying, "Hey, look at me, I can do this." You're proving yourself in that capacity. And then you go from proving, maybe even proving it to yourself, maybe proving it to the maybe some doubters, maybe some naysayers that are telling you, but you're proving what you're doing. Then you move to this next phase when you become depleted. And here is where you're chasing. This is where you're chasing, and chasing becomes hard. It starts to grind and you start feeling tired. You get up with bags underneath your eyes every day and you're like, man, do I got to do this again? And you got to do this again. And the problem is that you keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, and your body gets fatigued and tired. And then you finally cross the plateau and you're like, oh, great, I did more work. Now I made more money. And then I got to this point where my adrenals are working, but you're actually performing. And performing has a very dangerous word in our society, in my opinion. Performing is, for most people, they think performance is high level. I actually think performing is a dangerous place because you show the world that everything is working, but internally your whole entire system is breaking down. Then you move to the point where you're actually coming to this next phase between 25, 250 and 500, you're actually leading. Here's where you're leading people. Here's where you're leading the levels you want to get to. That is a place where you start to build and grow and create growth for your life, right? And that growth that's happening is where you're leading in this space. But you eventually get to this point where you're coherent and you're making money. And this is what I call $1 million brain. This is what I call the $1 million brain. Because a $1 million brain is not just about money. It's about your nervous system. It's about creating the brain that's tied together with what you're doing. And the brain has the capacity to carry it and come up with ideas, thoughts, ability to adapt. And this is a decision-making place. Down here, when we're at these lower levels, let's use a different color. If we're down at these levels here, our decision making, everything feels hard. Here is where it feels easy. Here's where it starts to feel simple and easy for how you perform and how you function with this. So that's how we start the process, right? And in a second, I'm going to go through what I like to sit and say are the 9 principles to get us the hows, the what we need to do, the framework that allows us to build this $1 million brain. But as you're building the $1 million brain, please understand that your body, this brain, is a physical thing. We have to honor it as a physical thing. It's not arbitrary, right? It's about making sure that your mind, your body, and your system are working in unison. So I'll say this to you because I also want you to think about this, right? Because if you're here and you're watching this, I will probably like to sit and say, you probably want to sit and say, man, how, if you want to look at how to work together or how to connect together and work in the same capacity and be able to build a $1 million brain, you want any of my help at any time, down here is the link. And we're going to show you on the link here. And you can go ahead and it'll have the applications for our group, for our $1 million brain group. And you can go ahead and apply to see if it's something that you'd qualify for. We take about 10 people a month. It's not for everybody, but you can just put the word in there and or they'll put it in there in the chat here, and you can go ahead and apply it if you think it's important for you. Right? Okay. So let's move to the actual understanding of what this $1 million brain looks like. Well, let's go to the how. So ultimately, when we look at this thing, what we want is cash. Let's use a different color. What we want here is cash. Cash is king, as they say. Well, I don't know. Now we got Bitcoin and we have all these other things that are out there, right? But if you want cash, that's money. That's money. That's how you provide for your family. That's what you do for the ones you love. And then ultimately you want to get connection. Right? I call this the 3 C's. There's cash, there's connection, and last but not least, it's contribution. It's contribution. And what I found is to create a $1 million brain, you need all 3 of these to be in harmonious synchronicity. Because there are so many times and so many people out there who chase the money but lose their family. And there are so many times where people chase service but don't make any money. And there's so many times that people take care of their family but don't feel like they have any cash in the bank. And many of you who are watching this are probably like, man, I know I'm one of those. I was too. I don't want to sit here from an ivory tower and tell you, oh, I never went through these things. I went through this myself. And after 30 years and 700,000 people, I can tell you that I've rewired almost everything under the sun. And I've seen these three things be the thing that causes most people the most grief, most challenge, and most agony in their life. By far, by far. People struggle and sit and say, I don't have money in my life, right? Or they say, I don't have connection in my life. Or they have cash and connection, and they're like, I have no contribution. I have no service in the world. I've worked with many founders and entrepreneurs who've sold their companies and they have all the money in the world, but no meaning, no meaning inside life. So that's not where it is. The $1 million brain is having all three of these in harmony. So let's go through what that looks like, right? Because if we're looking at it, when we have cash and connection, we create a lifestyle. And when we have connection and we have contribution, you create service. And when you have cash and contribution coming together, you create legacy. And let me retype this here. You create legacy. Pardon my error, my friends. When you have connection and contribution, you have love in there, not service. Love. And in the middle is where we have $1 million brain. Sits in between there. Now, typically, what I found after working with entrepreneurs of all walks of life, what I found is that there's a place of cash that becomes a problem. What should I do? How should I do it? How should I make money? How should I not make money? Do I just go work for a job? What is it? Is cash just a place of transactional revenue? For some people, it is. For some people, it is. That's not my world. That's not what I teach. That's not how I've learned to decode the system. And what I found is that when you are actually making money doing what it is you're designed to do, money becomes easy. Money becomes a byproduct of the services you render because you love to actually do it. And you've all heard the saying before that you can do what you love and you'll never work another day again in your life. And this is completely true. And I know a lot of people say, oh, it's not like that. You got to do the hard things. You got to, I would ask the ones who are actually doing what they love and making money doing it. I would be remiss to tell you that if I'm not one of those people, I do what I love every single day. And I figured out how to package, organize systems and processes to be able to help people do what they get to do and serve the world and make money doing it. And to some people, that sounds inspiring. For others, it's, not what they want to do. No sweat, either way. But what I found is that when you don't know what it is that your specialty is with making money, is that what I find is that you have a lack of clarity. And I think this lack of clarity is dangerous. Because when you have a lack of clarity, what you're going to do is you're going to lean towards anything just makes money. And then it becomes a transactional game. And you've all heard this idea before where you almost feel like you're selling your soul for the dollar. And I think a lot of people do. And I think maybe some people that do, they end up regretting it. They go through this journey in their life. But I think a lack of clarity happens for people. Now, when you don't have if you don't have connection, what you have is disconnection. Sounds so simple, right? Disconnection. But that disconnection is a big deal because that disconnection isn't only to others. That disconnection is to the self and others. Now, let's hit the nerve right where it needs to be. This is where families start getting involved. This is where kids are smacking you saying, "Why aren't you present? Why aren't you here? You're not sitting down. You're not watching with me." And what happens is that your care and your love that you're giving your family, they're not there. You don't feel present with them, and you're always working overtime to make things work. And I know that many people struggle with that. I did too. So I'm not taking away from it. I struggled from that myself, right? For many years. And then if you don't have contribution, you really end up having a where you're working, but you're working for a lack of meaning. And when you work for a lack of meaning, it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem because there's no question. You want a company who's going to do something, you want a leader who's going to do something, they have meaning, right? Leadership is about meaning. When we talk about legacy or leadership, that leadership equation is huge. But you have to have meaning. You have to have something that you're going to do. You have to create, look to create something in the world. But leadership is a gap. Leadership is a gap for people because they don't have meaning associated to their life. They don't have the growth associated to their life. And when we look at it, how do we do this? What do we need to do? So if you have a lack of clarity, what you need to do is you need to use a fun color. Use purple. You need to decode it. You need to decode in this capacity. When you don't have connection in your life, what you have to do is you have to rewire. And I use that term loosely, even though, but what you have to do is you have to delete plus upgrade. And we'll talk about this in a lot of detail in a few minutes here as we're going through it. And then if you don't have meaning in the equation and you have a lack of meaning, what you need is you have to embody. You have to embody the place of growth for your life. Because if you're not embodying it, what will happen is that your whole system becomes stressed with it. You may have all the intellectual capacity. Some of you, I know, can recite every success principle under the sun, but yet the results are still falling apart. Why aren't the results growing? Right? That's where people get stuck. That's where people need help because it's not just about intellectual knowledge. We're all smart. We're all taught to think with our brain. It's also about the body knowledge. It's about integrating that nervous system so that it goes in to who you are. See, this is not about a black or white type system. This is about you and decoding you in your life. That's what the $1 million brain is living what you're designed to do. That's the cool part. And you can make money doing it, and you can serve people doing it, and you get paid to do it. Amazing. And you get to do it with the ones that you love every single day. That's the game of the $1 million brain. So here's what we're going to do. Now we're going to get into the how. How do we do this? How do we make this happen? How do we incorporate this into our life? So I'm going to go through a bunch of steps here. Now, what I want you to do is I'm going to draw this here. I'll just draw it. We're going to use a traffic light. Okay. We're going to use a traffic light. And this traffic light is going to tell us if you're doing this and you know this, then you're in the right space. And how we'll do this is we'll color this in. If you are doing, you know it, you have it figured out, that part is good for you, then all you do is you're going to give yourself a green color on that spot. Okay. If you're like, it's good, but I actually need some work. I need more work on that. Okay, great. No sweat. Honesty is the best policy, as they say. We put a yellow. You put a yellow in there. Okay. And if you're going through it and you're like, man, I'm good. I'm good. I'm really good with this. But I'm stuck. Actually, I'm not doing that well. I don't know it. I have no answers to this. Then what you got to do is you got to give yourself a red. That means, look, I need to work on this. I need to stop and I need to work on this because when you do, then you get clarity, right? Because most of us, I promise you, we're not decoding, we're not rewiring, we're not deleting parts of ourselves that don't need to be there. We're not upgrading the parts of ourselves that do need to be there and upgrade our system. We're going to talk about that a lot, and we're not embodying it. We are intellectually processing, but our body, it sits here. This part of the system is what we need to engage. So that being the case, you're going to give yourself the colors as you go along, and you're going to put in the chat box here as we go along. Okay. You're going to tell me that, hey, look, I'm a red, I'm a yellow, I'm a green in this. If this is all making sense so far, put yes in the chat box or say this is great, right? Like Cheryl, I'm looking at your comments, definitely borrowed belief. That's definitely me. So great. That's giving me feedback that what we're doing is working and we're having a great conversation here. Okay, great. And again, if this is something that you're like, man, I need help with this, I need to install the Dr. Rewire system, the whole $1 million brain system, so that I can get over all this junk and implement the four brains into my life, then you go ahead and you just click that link that's there and it says Dr. Rewire Live and it's an offer. It tells you exactly how to be a part of my community, what we do, how we do it, and if you're a good fit. And then you apply. And then if it works out, great. If it doesn't, no sweat. No big deal. Okay. So the first thing what we have to do in this ecosystem is we need to know your brain DNA, what I call the four brains DNA. Now, I've devised a system in my own life. I've devised a system because I needed to figure out how my brain worked. Because I don't know about you, but I felt very confused in my life. I felt stuck in my life. I've built things. I've lost, I made money. I've lost money. I kept on judging myself. I kept on beating myself up, thinking like, oh, there's got to be a better way. But you know what? You rebound, you come back, you work hard, you work hard, you work hard. You know what working hard does? Here's the thing that our parents never taught us. Working hard oxidizes your cells and breaks it down. So you do want to work hard, but the things that you love to do, not the beatings that we keep taking. And I didn't know that either. And then I had to figure out how my brain worked. And I created from your nervous system the first ever brain DNA system that allows me to decode your whole nervous system pattern. And I use this, and I've used it with people like Damon John, and I was with Dave Asprey on his at biohacking, is Beyond Biohacking a couple of years ago, and I went over Damon's results with it. It was it's online somewhere, you can find it, I'm sure, but it was amazing. But here's the really interesting part about it. Damon told me when he figured out his brain DNA, but his partner's DNA, his wife's DNA, it made him understand her at a whole new level. And think about that for yourself. If you could understand people, including yourself, at a whole new level, it opens the door to understanding human behavior and who you are. So, right. So first is your brain DNA. Now, some of you have your brain DNA and some of you know it. It's fantastic. There's four of them. You're either what we call a chaser, a protector, a receiver, or a bridge builder. And they're all different, right? A chaser, they're the type of people who are aggressive, going out, they want to build things, they want to go create in the world, but they have a hard time because they go super fast and then they crash. They go super fast and then they crash. And then they keep beating themselves up in the process. If you're a receiver, you typically are the type of person that wants to connect and love people and help connect and make all this harmony happen. It's great. Fantastic. However, you also get stuck because money slips through your hands like water or sand because you hold on to guilt and shame and have a hard time with dealing with that. You're more emotionally centered, but you're not allowed to express your emotions in today's world. It's hard in that. Or if you're a bridge builder, say, for example, you're the type of individual that says, you know what, I love bringing communities together. I love helping people and their communities get together. It's great, powerful, and it's powerful, but you hate conflict. So you struggle with the idea of cash and money because you'll not never, but you'll have a very hard time confronting people about money. So when you try and do sales, it's difficult. Or for example, let's take this last one, right? If we take the protector is a really powerful one as well, but they're typically the ones who are stuck and they're stuck in fear. They're the ones who really live in the analysis of paralysis or the paralysis of analysis, excuse me, the other way around, right? They're the ones who are constantly thinking, and no matter how much they have, it's never enough. It's never enough, right? Not because they're chasing, but because they're scared. Because they're scared. But that's how their nervous system is designed. So when you're looking at it, to know your brain DNA and know the whole report is very important. So you put down what you think it is, or if it's a green that you have it, fantastic, right? If you've done the quiz from my book, I'm going to suggest you put down a yellow, right? You can put a yellow for that because it's about 65 to 70% accurate because it depends on the mood, right? And so if you're there, then you put yellow. And if you're got it, then you know what it is, and you put green, right? But if you don't, you put a red. So what I want you to do is highlight it, whatever it is for you, right? Oops, that's the eraser. Okay. So most people don't. So I'm just going to put that in red, for everyone here. Okay, great. Now let's go to the second one, which is your values. Now your values are different. Your values are not things like honesty, loyalty, niceness, kindness. That's not true. You have a neurological set of values. And this is what people don't realize is that your neurological values that you actually live with are what your life demonstrates. And you're already doing it. You're already living it, but you don't know it. So the unconscious part of your brain is doing it, and you don't realize it. When you decode this and you understand what your values are, there's the things that you were naturally designed to do without even realizing. For me, my highest value, believe it or not, go figure, teaching. It's teaching, communicating. Well, duh, I've been doing it for a very long time and I love to do it and I enjoy to do it. And I love having cameras and meeting and speaking and coming to events and keynoting. I love doing that stuff. Well, of course, it's who I am. But when I didn't know that, I'll tell you honestly, my healthcare providers and my healthcare practitioners here, and even my wellness coaches and that, I tell you, like I used to think that being in practice was the most important part for my life. And I used to think that, you know what, I needed to see lots of patients. And I did. And I saw lots of patients. I built one of the largest chiropractic clinics in the world. We were seeing 1,250 people a week. But I kept on evolving and thinking more and building more and thinking more and building more. And the only reason it did that is not because I was just a great doctor. It did that because I educated every week. And really, what I loved was my seminars. And so when you figure out what your values actually are, your brain sets you up to do these things. Now, there's a space in the pulvinar region of the hypothalamus that's connected to the anterior portion of the actual or the pulvinar region of the hypothalamus that actually is filtering and deciding what your values are. It's actually there, and it's looking in your nervous system to decode and help you realize what that is. So that is step number two. Most people, what I found is they think values are things like honesty and loyalty and kindness and nice. And that's just not true. Those are social norms, but they're not your values, right? When you know your values, you live them every day and you do them every day. And then you figure out how to build a life around those things every day. And you make money doing that every day. And you take your family on that trip every day. And then you get to serve the world doing that every day, right? Just transparently for me, my values are teaching, learning, family. What I do. It's kind of what I do. And I've now been in 74 countries, written three best-selling books, taken my kids across the world with different keynotes and programs I've done. I've packaged it all together because I do believe that when you know who you are and you decode your system, you can build that life. You can build a life around that, right? So let's just say you do know that is what that is for yourself. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm not sure. But let's say maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I'm going to put that in a yellow, right? We're going to put that in yellow. We're going to put that in yellow here. Some of you are like, yeah, I know what it is. Okay, great. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Some of you don't. So we need to know what that is. Okay. Now I'll tell you, the third piece of the puzzle in decoding is one of the greatest discoveries I've made. And I don't go into detail about it here, but I will tell you this. We've all heard this idea that your beliefs, you've all heard this idea in the generic personal development world, change your beliefs, change your life, right? Change your beliefs, change your life. What if I told you that the beliefs aren't actually real? The beliefs are actually the symptoms. They're actually the symptoms of the entire system that's in your nervous system. And there's something that I've discovered through the process of understanding neurology and neurons and that I've actually coined, and it's your anti-beliefs. Trademark it. So I'll put it there for you, right? It's the anti-beliefs. The anti-beliefs are the key that runs the whole show. They're the key that runs the entire ecosystem underneath it. And nobody understands it. Nobody has understood this. Nobody has ever created this. And nobody has understood how the nervous system builds beliefs behind this. And these anti beliefs are the ones that are running the show. So for most people, I'm going to sit and say you probably don't know what the anti-belief is. So if that's the case, so maybe some of you do, but the anti-beliefs that are running your patterns is going to be red for most people. It's going to be red for most people. Okay. And if it's red for you, then you have a big stumbling block there, right? So we can see most people, what I found, I spent the better part of 30 years of my life decoding, not you, me. I decoded me. Why? Because how can I live? I had this thing in my head. Now, maybe you feel this way, maybe you don't. How do you live an inspiring life if you don't know who you are? It kind of doesn't make any sense. So for me, I wanted the biggest thing I wanted to do is understand who I was. Because only when I understood who I was could I teach my children how to understand who they are. And so in that process, it took me down a journey. It took me down a journey and one that was very challenging, challenging in many levels. But it's when I lost the connection to myself. It's when I lost the connection to what I thought was what I wanted to build. And I basically lost who I was in the process. And it was that building and rebuilding of myself that made me come back in it. So when we look at this next piece of the puzzle, when we talk about the next phases, right? When we talk about rewiring, that's deleting and upgrading. Let me use an analogy to give you some sense of this. Everybody has one of these gadgets, right? Everybody has a phone. Now, Steve Jobs in his genius and Tim Cook in his business world and genius and Apple in their genius did something. They said you have hardware and then you have software. Now, the hardware is the camera, it's the phone, but it's the microchips. That's the hardware. The software is the technology that runs and operates it. Okay. We are no different in this capacity. We have a brain, and this brain is the hardware. Our physical body is the hardware. The software is what we connect, how they connect, and then what comes out in the way that we think. When you have, I don't know what version of iPhone they're on, right? An iPhone 7, and you're trying to run the software of, let's say it's, I don't even know what software level, 25. Eventually the phone stops working. It says you need to buy a new phone. You need to upgrade and buy a new phone. Only then, only then will the system work. Only then will the software and the hardware come together to work and optimize. Most of us have not been taught how to optimize our software and upgrade it. What we need to do in that process is the same thing that happens in all of our phones is when you update the software, you delete old patterns, you delete old systems, and then you upgrade to add in the new software. So I hope that makes sense to you, right? That's my best analogy that I've got for you to make you understand a phone. Now, when we do this in the rewiring process, it's not rewiring. It's not, it's literally you're taking patterns and restructuring the patterns in your system. These patterns have been built because of three different areas. And let me explain what they are. Three different areas, right? There's these emotions. These emotions run the patterns. Let's use a different color here. Nope. Guilt and shame. This one's dangerous. Guilt and shame. This guilt and shame pattern is dangerous because we don't realize it. Guilt and shame internally is running the show. This is the system that's running the show internally. And when we have guilt or shame running our nervous system, we give away money. We give away our money. I always sit and say that whatever you have guilt towards, you give away towards. So whatever money you have coming in the door is going out at the same time, and it's being lost. So that's the guilt and shame component, right? So put down, color it, put in the chat box. Tell me, is this a red, a yellow, or a green for you, right? Maybe you're like, I don't have any guilt, doc. I'm good. I'm pretty good. Or maybe it's like, yeah, I do. I have some internal stuff. I have some internal stuff that's holding me back. So put yourself here. I'll put it at a yellow for you, right? I'll put it at a yellow for you. And that's kind of the brakes on the system. The whole system is putting brakes on. So you tell me what you think. Is this something that you like, "Ah, this guilt thing, no big deal. It's not a big deal." Or is it something that you think, you know what, man, that guilt and shame thing, I have a hard time with it. And if you do, that's okay too. I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with you, that you just have a bunch of patterns that are running your show and you can get rid of it. You can get rid of it. We can wire it, rewire it. We can create the brain to do what it wants to. That's the powerful and cool thing about this, right? We can do whatever we want to with it. It's great. Okay. So then what we do is we move to the next spot. The next one is resentment, self or other, to you or to other people. Resentment can be dangerous, right? As resentment is defined by perceiving that someone has caused you more pain than pleasure in the past, right? That someone has hurt you in the past. And if someone's hurt you, then you now feel unsafe. Your nervous system says, I'm unsafe. I can't move beyond that. That's it. I can't do it. And so for some people, they may think that they have resentment and they don't know it. And some people, it's no big deal. It's no whatever it is. Some like, I don't have any. I'm pretty cool. So whatever it is for you, you put down the color. You tell me what you think it is for you, right? I'll put green here. Maybe some people are like, I don't have any resentment. I don't have any resentment. Maybe you do. Maybe you're like, you know what? That ex-husband of mine, he's a narcissistic SO. Yeah, maybe it's him. Maybe, maybe, maybe there's some resentment there. Maybe. Okay. I don't know. You guys figure it out. Okay. And last but not least, in the decoding, or excuse me, in the rewiring space, what we have to do is we look at it and we say, okay, what do we need to do? Now that we need to delete these emotional patterns, we need to now install the upgraded ones. We need to install the ones that are operating, that are working at another level, right? That is where we now install the new pattern. So for example, let's use an example to give this thing some context, right? If you have guilt or shame or resentment and you're trying to hit the $1 million mark in your business, but you have a belief pattern and a system and an anti-belief that's saying that, you know what, being a millionaire is going to cost me lots of money. Being a millionaire is not good because money is the root of all evil. Being a millionaire is dangerous and having money is bad. And it's all about my worth. And if I have money, then I'm a bad person. And I should give it all away and just give everything for free to everybody. Then you have to, that belief is affecting your self-worth. It's affecting your cash. But what if it's now translating into your family? What if that belief is the same belief you're now teaching your kids? What if that belief is that same pattern, or that anti-belief is the same pattern you're giving into your customers? And now you're undercharging, under delivering. So we've got it. What we have to do is we have to delete these old patterns, and then we have to bring in the upgraded, install the new iPhone 27 software. That's what we have to do there. Okay. So maybe you're like, I know how to do that. And some people do, some people don't. Right. So again, I'll put this at a yellow. I'll put this at a yellow here. I think that'll be good. Okay, great. Okay, very good. So tell me so far, as you look at this, how many reds do you have? How many yellows do you have? And how many greens do you have? Right? Some of you may find that you may have lots of red, which is okay. Which some of you may find you have lots of yellows, which is okay. We're working through this together. And some of you say, I'm green, doc. I've got this thing figured out. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Who might it say? Right? Typically, what I found is that people are struggling. There's two levels of people that I find that are people in the 0 to 150 range in business, and then the 250 to 500 range. Those are the people who are striving to build more. So I don't know where you fall into that, but you can decide that for yourself. Okay. Now, before I move forward, I want you to understand something. There's a term that's so important that I'm just going to write it out here. Your self-worth equals your net worth. Your self-worth equals your net worth. What that means is this, is if you're running old patterns, old shame, old guilt, old emotions, it's going to affect your income. It's going to affect your net worth. So between your cash and your connection, your family, the ones you love, that lifestyle becomes the major component there, right? It becomes a major component because what you're trying to do is you're trying to provide a lifestyle. You're trying to give being a lifestyle entrepreneur. Most people don't realize that what we are, for the most part, is lifestyle entrepreneurs. There are very few people who are really entrepreneurial and building major corporations, and then chances are they're not here watching this. They're probably watching something else. They're probably working with the governments and trying to do things. I don't know what they do, right? But most of us, we're lifestyle entrepreneurs. We want to make money, but we want to travel the world. We want to spend time with our kids and our family. We want to spend time with the ones that we love. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's an amazing place to be. So honor that for yourself. It's okay to be that. You don't have to chase this big word of entrepreneurialism unnecessarily. I did it. It's a waste of time. It's really a waste of time. Live the life you want to live. When we get from connection to contribution is where you start to love your life that you want to serve the world with it. This is so powerful. This is where you want to serve the world at a whole nother level. And you want to sit and say, I want to take what I know in my service, my unique gifts that I've been given, I want to give those to the world. You're gonna need self-worth to do that. You're gonna need self-worth to do that. You're gonna need to rewire the old patterns, install the new patterns to build on that. Because I've seen people who built businesses, hundreds of millions in revenue, fallen internally because they didn't have this next piece component filled in. And so when I look at that, right, we look at it and we say, okay, well, what's the next piece of the puzzle? The next piece of the puzzle is what I like to call your nervous system capacity. What if I told you that from your brain DNA, we've already figured out that every part of you, your ability to hold money, revenue, income, build, be a leader is all determined by your nervous system and the ability to manage that stress and the ecosystem of that stress. It's all in your nervous system. So maybe some of you are like, man, I have a great nervous system and I can handle all the stress in the world. Others of you are like, my goodness, someone says hi to me and I crumble and fall apart. I don't know where you are in this, right? But what do you think your nervous system capacity is? And a better question is, do you know? We don't guess. I test. When we have workshops and programs, I test your nervous system capacity by actually looking at your energetic field and to look at the energetic field and see what is the nervous system expanding. When I look at the brain, when we do EEGs on the brain, we're actually testing to see, am I getting the brain to expand? Am I getting the brain to work faster, more efficiently? When we do that, then the nervous system starts to work correctly. Then we start to work in a unison and the whole body starts to get organized. So, where are you with your nervous system capacity? Some of you are probably like, I'm great with it. Some of you are like, I'm not so great with it. I'm going to put down because maybe some of you are great at it and you're already at a green. But if some of you are like, man, I tell you, doc, I have some problems there. Like, I really have problems. Then it may be a red, and that's okay. That's okay, right? Next piece of the puzzle is when we look at it, it's your mission. Your mission is essentially the key to making you drive and continue to build something, right? I like to sit and say that in the pursuit of a vision, many of you have done vision boards, put them on walls and stared at them and said, why is my vision not coming through? I did the cut up pictures. I looked at the wall. Why is it not showing up? It only shows up in about 5% of the people because only 5% of the world is actually congruent to who they are. That's the funny part. So they don't actually get there. And they put these things on a wall that they don't actually get to. And they're like, why am I not building? Why am I not growing? And then they build a guilt, shame, and resentment in the process. Your mission is beyond your vision. Your mission is the part of you that says, you know what? You'll go through pursuit of pleasure and pain in order to get what it is you're going for. However, if it's just a vision, it'll perish when things get hard. It'll perish when things get hard. But a mission is bigger than that. A mission is bigger than just the vision of the things you're going to get. So I challenge you to know your mission. Know your mission. My mission is simple. I want to touch 1 billion lives. That's it. I want to touch a billion lives through my books, through these YouTubes, through videos, through my podcast, whatever it is. I want to get to a billion lives. That's what I'd love to see happen. Right. And if I can make that happen, I'm not sure what it is, right? You have to decide what that is for you. I can't tell you what that is. But there's a system, there's a way to devise this, there's a way to do this to know what your mission looks like. So if we look at this and I look at your mission, maybe you know it, maybe you don't, right? But for most people, what I found is that they don't actually know their mission. So maybe we put this in red. They're not clear on the mission that they want to pursue. Okay. And at any point in time, if you're like, man, I want Dr. T's system. I want to implement this system into my life, into my career, into my business. I want to build $1 million brain. And I want you to go and just look in the chat box here. And there's a form that you can fill in, right? It says an application. Fill out the application, see if it's a right fit, if it's a conversation that we need to have. We're going to sell out. We do every month as it is. We only take 10 people at a time. And then we can get started to work with you. I look over the applications. I make sure that you're a right fit. I make sure that you're a good candidate for what I do. And if I think you are, then I'll tell you. If I don't think you are, I'll tell you that as well. We know exactly, after doing this for a very long time, I know exactly who I can help and who I can't. And so that's my pitch for you. You can go ahead and fill out the application if that's what you want to do. Last but not least, there's a lot of conversation about this in the world, but our world is worse today in it than ever before. I do believe this to be true. I don't believe that we are in a good space for it. Some people really are, but most of the world is not. And that's really your health. Your health. Integrating your metabolic health, your cardiovascular health, everything, as well as your nervous system health. These work in hand in this capacity. Most people's health is slowly falling apart because they're running on cortisol, right? Because if we remember the first stages, they're in the stages of depleted and cortisol. They never get to the place of coherence. So they never get to the point where the whole system is tuned and working together, like we set up here, right? It's never working here. They're typically running on these levels. And if you think about it, most people make under that revenue level. So we've got to move the brain, the money, and the body up over this level here to get this point, right? I don't know what your health is, but I do believe that having healthy practices, your nervous system health, your metabolic health, your cardiovascular health, your muscular health, all the levels holistically is essential. Maybe some of you already are because you're in the health and wellness space and you're doing great. So maybe we give that a green. Okay, maybe we give that one a green. Let's see. Maybe we put a green on that one. You're like, I got that one, Doc. I'm good on that. Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. We filled out this entire sheet and we built $1 million brain. Now look at this, and I want you to put in the chat box for me which three are the biggest levers that you need to move right now. Which three are the biggest things that you need to move as a lever right now that'll make the biggest shift for you in your life with what you're doing to build this $1 million brain? Take a look at it. Maybe it's knowing your values. Maybe it's clearing this guilt and shame game or the resentment, or actually installing this next level of wiring I need. Or maybe it's, you know what, I've got to get my mission in place. And I got to start organizing this mission. And I got to get everything together with that. Right? You look at it, you put down what you think is right for you. I know when I first started, it was I could go out and hustle and do all these pieces and I could work hard. And I lived very, very well at this point at performing, leading, and I thought I had it figured out until my entire world fell apart and my body was starting to fall apart. I was 50 pounds overweight. I smoked cigarettes. I drank like a fish. I did all these things that were just destroying my life, and I didn't realize it because I was running in these systems. I was running in these systems, not realizing it. And it's only when I started to open up this $1 million brain idea and go through the work with it did I clear this part of it here to get to that level. So you get to decide where you want to be with that. That's that's the journey, right? And if you're looking at this and saying, okay, I need to implement this into my brain. I need to implement this into my life. Great. Let's talk. fill out the application. Let's have a conversation to see if this is a right fit for you, right? If it is, then we can help, you can help you install the system for you. If it's not, that's okay too. That's okay too, right? No sweat. I hope this was provided you a ton of value. Hope that you got to look at and think about this in a different way and understand that you can build $1 million brain, not because of money, because you actually know who you are, you love who you are, and you spend your life doing the things that you love to do. That's a powerful place. And I know for some people, it's like, man, how do I do that? How do I build that? There's a system. There's a system to do it. There's a roadmap. And I've built the entire four brains system in underneath this $1 million brain to put this together to help you and help people do it. And it's the same steps I've walked through and I walk people through all the time. And I can tell you story after story, but I can tell you that the greatest joy is when you see someone who is trying to build their life and they think about money and they think that money is the answer. And what they decipher is that, bam, that the money is not even the issue. It's that their problem was over here in their family and they didn't realize that. Well, the problem was over here in their health. And all of a sudden that got cleared and then their money door opened up. And all of a sudden all three of them started to work together, right? And they all started working in this harmony where they started to get the lifestyle that they wanted, right? Then they said, hey, you know what? Then they start to have the love in their life that they wanted. And then they get build a leadership and legacy of the way that they wanted. And all three of these started to work together. And this is what allows people to build into this $1 million brain. When they have to work in unison in a structured system. And when that system starts to dial in, man, you start becoming a whole different person and start playing the game at a whole other level of life. So if I can help you do that, I look forward to it. I'll see you on the inside. Hopefully, I get to work with you and I get to change your life as well. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Much love to you all. Have a great day.